Manifest. I'm Courtney, and welcome to church. It's May long weekend, which means we've been at this COVID pandemic thing for over 2 months now. I don't know about you, but I've been noticing a whole lot of weirdness that has developed in my everyday life. Weirdness like COVID brain. COVID brain is where you just lose track of what day it is. Monday could be Friday, Friday could be Saturday, Saturday could be Wednesday, and it could be 1963, and nobody would know the difference. The other thing that I've noticed that is super weird in my life is what I call COVID nests. COVID nests or COVID spaces in your home are places where you've just started accumulating stuff and it doesn't have a home. I think these things happen because we're out of routine. One of the COVID nests in my home is on my couch. I've collected all of my crocheting stuff. On my left hand, I've got all of my yarn. On my right hand, I've got all of my crochet hooks. And I brought 2 giant cushions over to support my elbows when I start my 12-hour crocheting marathons. It's pretty awesome, but it doesn't leave a whole lot of space for anything else. I got thinking last week, I can't be the only one who's noticed some COVID weirdness in my life. So I decided, while out on deliveries yesterday, Friday, that I'd ask some of my Evergreen to Go delivery recipients what kind of weirdness they've experienced. So let's see what they have to say.
All right, so the weirdest thing about COVID is human behavior in general, specifically the amount of toilet paper that people have been stockpiling.
The weirdest thing is trying to teach my children online and just seeing them two-dimensionally on the screen through Google Meets and seeing everyone else two-dimensionally and being so excited when I get to see them in a three-dimensional face-to-face.
My mom and I played a 5-day lawnmower game. And we were not in a rush, so it took some time, but I ended up coming out on top.
I walked out of a shower into my dad's conference call, but at least I had a towel wrapped around me.
My friend called me and they kept ringing in my dad's meeting.
I said no to a dog for so many years, and now I have one.
Every time I go grocery shopping, I buy baking supplies on sale, but I've yet to actually bake anything. So if and when the apocalypse does come, I will have enough baking supplies to live off banana bread for 100 years.
My children don't wear clothes anymore. Not that they're naked, they're just always dressed up. So I think that when Levi goes to kindergarten next year, he will go as a dinosaur or a pirate or a spaceman, and they just don't even understand outfits.
That's awesome. So whether it's surprise dogs, 24/7 dress-up events, or 5-day-long card games, I think a little bit of weirdness is exactly what we need to get through this pandemic. Welcome to church. I hope you enjoy it.
Hey boys and girls, Mr. Steven here. I'm going for a walk by my house and there's something that I wanted to show you. It's right over here. Let's see. It's in that tree right over here. Can you see it? That is an owl's nest. There's an owl in there. You know, owls are often associated with being wise and wisdom, but studies show they're not particularly smart. Crows and magpies and ravens, on the other hand, are really smart. They can learn to use tools and solve puzzles, and some ravens have even been found to recognize people's faces. They'll even warn other birds if the face they recognize is a threat. But even though those birds are really smart, none of them compare to the wisdom of King Solomon. He was the third anointed king that God anointed as king over Israel. Let's head back and I'll tell you about him. We have a new big picture question that we're going to explore over the next few weeks. The question is, what does God know? We're also going to be learning a lot about wisdom over the next few weeks. Wisdom and knowledge are often linked together. So when it comes to understanding God's wisdom, we often want to know, what does God know about the universe? So we're going to be exploring that, and we'll come up with the answer to our big picture question, what does God know, a little bit later. But right now, keep it in the back of your mind, that question, what does God know, as you hear the story. Now, to set the stage, we know that God's chosen people were living in the land he promised them, and they wanted a king. The first king they had, Saul, wasn't so good. The next king, David, he was a great king, and he ruled Israel well and followed God and with all of his heart for a long time. And after David came his son Solomon, and that's where we are now. When it came time, David was getting old and he was ready to move on, and Solomon was going to be king next. He told Solomon some words. He said, Solomon, you need to be strong and brave, and you need to follow and obey God. And then God will keep his promise that every king of Israel will come from our family. Then David died, and Solomon became the new king. One night, while Solomon was sleeping, he had a dream. God came to him in his dream and asked Solomon, Solomon, ask me for anything you want, and I will give it to you. Anything? Well, a king might ask for a long life so they can be king for a long time, or riches to be really wealthy, or maybe even Solomon could have asked for victory over all of his enemies. But Solomon didn't ask for those things. He said to God in his dream, God, I'm a young man. I don't know a lot about being king. Make me wise and obedient to you. Help me know right from wrong so that I can serve your people well. Well, God was really pleased with Solomon's answer, and he says, Solomon, I'm going to make you wise. I'm going to make you so wise that nobody has ever been as wise as you, and no one will ever be as wise as you, Solomon. And because you asked for wisdom, I'm going to give you things you didn't ask for, like riches and honor and a long life. And so Solomon got all these things, and when he woke up, he praised God. And I love that story. But sometimes it makes me feel a little bit guilty. If God offered to give me anything I asked for, I think I might pick something kind of selfish, like lots of money, or all the video game consoles, or maybe a really long life. Solomon chose wisdom. He asked for wisdom. Now, wisdom isn't just knowing a lot. It's understanding what to do with what you know to make the best choices. Now, God is the source of all wisdom. He knows everything about everything, so what he chooses is always best. So, what does God know? That's our big picture question, right? Here's the answer. God knows everything about the past, present, and future. Let me ask the question again. What does God know? Say the answer with me. God knows everything about the past, present, and future. One more time. What does God know? God knows everything about the past, present, and future. Good job! That means nothing surprises God. His plans always come to pass. He is all-wise and all-knowing, and everything he chooses is best. Solomon knew that his people needed a good leader, and so he asked for wisdom. God gave Solomon that wisdom to know how to rule his people, to know how to do what was best for them, how to do what was right and what was wrong, and how he knew what was right and what was wrong. But do you know what? Even though Solomon was the wisest man who ever lived, people from all over the world came to hear him speak and hear him talk and hang out with him because of how wise he was. He became really famous. And he wrote books and poems and things to help people live their lives. Even though all of those things are true, he was so wise, he wasn't perfect. See, he still made some mistakes. He maybe knew what was right and what was wrong, but that doesn't mean he always did what was right. He needed a rescuer, just like we need a rescuer. God gave Solomon wisdom. Solomon wasn't perfect, but God had a plan to rescue all of his people and send another king, his son Jesus, who would be even wiser than Solomon. And Jesus came and trusted God completely. He died on the cross for us, to rescue us from sin, and rose again so that we can be with God forever. I'm excited to explore this new big picture question with you, and we'll see you later. Bye!
Okay, I hope that summary was helpful for you to get you up to speed. If you've missed some Sundays, you're wondering what we're talking about here today as we lean into time travel axiom number 4, which is don't get stuck. Now, this one is really practical. In fact, I would say this is where the rubber meets the road. And let me start by saying this. You know people who are stuck in the future or stuck in the past. You absolutely know people who have time traveled and can't seem to just come present to the present moment. Like the guy in your life who's stuck in the 80s, man. It's just the hair and the music. And it's like you are so stuck in it. You've even used those words, right? And then there's the person who's always stuck on the future. They're always worrying or they're the kind of person that's going like, yeah, next year I'm going to do this and next season and when I'm done school. And it's always later. It's always later. They're stuck in the future. And you're looking at them and they're always talking about the future as though it will magically arrive without them actually doing something to get there in the present moment, right? So we know people. Now in time travel lore, it gets really interesting because a common plot point in time travel movies, if you know time travel movies, is that the time travelers will travel either to the past or the future and get stuck. And part of the movie is them trying to figure out how to reactivate the time machine so they can come back to the present. Now, what's really at stake here, again, is your ability to thrive in the present moment. Why? Because you can only thrive or be at peace in the present moment if you're at peace with your past and your future, right? So this is so critically important. We're going to talk today about how to set your past at peace. So again, don't just sit there with your popcorn and just think this is a really interesting concept. No. This can set you free. Now, to get things started today, I want to tell you a little story. Late January, I think it might have been January 23rd, I was involved in a car accident that actually totaled my beloved Toyota Matrix that I've been driving for years, and it was pretty nasty. And the result of the accident is that I actually am suffering from a concussion to this day. Some of you are like, yeah, we can tell. So some of you are saying you can't tell. Thank you. You're my new friends. So anyways, this accident, here's how it happened. Beautiful day. It was one of those warm, uncharacteristically nice January afternoons, and I was headed downtown. So I was driving down Country Hills Boulevard. Most of the snow had melted off the streets. Do you remember that? And it was just so beautiful. And there were some wet spots, but no ice. And so I was driving pretty confidently down Country Hills Boulevard, and I was about to turn south onto Deerfoot Trail. For those of you who don't know, Deerfoot Trail is like a highway, go 110 kilometers an hour within city limits. Pretty awesome, although it does get pretty snarled up in traffic. I'm digressing. So I'm accelerating into the on-ramp, because that's what you do, so I can be up to speed by the time I get to the 110 kilometer an hour mark. If you're not one of those people, you need to learn how to merge. Either way, I'm accelerating, and I'm feeling good. And out of nowhere, this patch of ice comes around the curve at me. I didn't drive to it. It came to me. That's what it looked like. And I had just about enough time to say, oh, no. And then everything was kind of a little slow, right? Just like in the movies, And I was kind of frozen in this moment, and the car goes hurtling off into the embankment, going 70 plus kilometers an hour. And I had a moment after the oh no moment, because I was able to keep the car straight. I thought, I think I got this. And then as my eyes lifted up to what was coming ahead, there was a massive dip with a bump on the other side, probably to prevent cars from going through the ditch and coming out the other side. Just saying. And I hit that thing so hard, the car just kaboom. You can see the damage that did to the front of the car. And I actually got air, and then boom, landed. The airbag didn't go off because the car didn't actually, come to an abrupt stop. And in the aftermath of this thing, I'm like, it was so extreme. This jump was so extreme. My glasses flew off of my head into the back seat, were perfectly folded, waiting for me later in the back seat. Well, a month goes by. And now I'm in the passenger seat of our Highlander. Shauna, my wife, is driving. And we're on another on-ramp to Deerfoot Trail, this time north. And she's got all-wheel drive. She's just got, it's a good vehicle, okay? So she doesn't lose control. And by the way, the roads are clear, but it's still winter. And she's flying around this curve, and I feel the fear start crawling up my neck. Do you know what I'm talking about? It starts crawling on my neck, and I grab the side, and she's like, are you okay? Okay? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, oh, I'll slow down. For me, right? I'm like, just do it for me. I know you're safe. I know you're a good driver, but could you slow down for me, please? And so she slows down. Now, what's going on there? There's no ice. There's no problem. The roads are clear. It's a different situation. What's happening is what my brain is designed to do. Now, the reason I'm explaining this is we have to understand what's happening underneath the hood in our minds, in our hearts, in our souls, if we're going to understand how to get unstuck from the past and then next week, the future. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, I can't think of a better illustration of how the brain actually works, our minds, our personalities works, than Pixar Disney movie Inside Out. Kids, have you seen that movie? Put up your hand if you've seen that movie. I have seen that movie. If you haven't seen it, I won't wreck it. But the premise of the movie is that a little girl named Riley, lives somewhere in the Midwest, I think Minnesota or something like that, and her family's uprooted. They moved to San Francisco, to the big city. So there's all kinds of letting go and grief, and she's like a prepubescent teen, and the emotions are starting to fire. And so what they do in the course of this movie, not just with her, but primarily her, is they personify her emotions. And you can see which ones: fear, joy, disgust, anger, and sadness. These are separate characters in her mind that are constantly interacting. And by watching how they interact, you learn kind of how to process grief and disappointment and sadness and happiness in your own life. It's a brilliant concept. Well, what I'd like to do today is the same kind of, I'm going to attempt to do the same kind of thing. Now, I'm not nearly as smart as the Pixar people and Brad Bird and all these people that actually like create this stuff. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce you to 3 separate functions of your brain, and we're going to personify them this morning. These are your inner historian, inner narrator, and inner prophet. So while life is happening, you're interpreting your experience. That's the narrator. Then what's happening is while you're interpreting it, that experience is being handed off to the historian who is writing the story of what happened. In other words, your history. And at the very same time, you've got an inner prophet that is using the data of the historian and the narrator to predict the future. And so this is how these work. And what we're gonna do in the next few minutes is we're gonna talk about how these all fit together. And it's really, really cool. All right? So before we get into that, though, I need to make a distinction. Before I talk about what the historian does, you need to understand a very important principle. And it's this. The past and your history are completely different things. Your past is what actually happened. It's the fact. It can't be changed. It happened, and it's not going to unhappen. No matter how many times we time travel, you're not going to undo your past, right? But your history is how you describe what happened. So when we talk about putting our past to rest, what I'm actually meaning is changing our history, adapting our history, because we often get it wrong because of these bozos that we're going to meet today. All right, so let's take some more time and let's spend some time with the historian first. All right, the historian is an interesting character. He catalogs experiences based on how they make us or made us feel. Now, this is a bit of a surprise because when you meet historians, you're thinking this person is super cerebral, they're objective, they're analyzing the facts, and not this guy. This guy, and I'm not just talking about myself, the little dude with the hair that's trying to be a faux hawk. I'm talking about how our inner historian actually works. Your inner historian is super emotional. It's all about feelings. It's all about feelings. How did it make us feel? That's how it organizes our history and makes sense of our history. And it's super nostalgic, this inner historian as well. Okay, so because they're nostalgic and it's all about feelings, they use memory boxes to organize everything. Memory boxes. I'm going to show you some memory boxes in just a minute, show you how this works. Now, you're asking, what is a memory box? A memory box is basically a container that contains all the pertinent information about your memories so that it can be archived and accessed in the present and the future, okay? So that's what's going on. Now, here's what goes into a memory box. There are 4 kind of components, all right? A memory box includes the emotion of that experience, whatever that memory entails, the emotion that went along with it. That's the primary feature. A verdict about it. In other words, therefore, or because we experienced this emotion, therefore this must be true. And details about that event that validate that verdict, and then a labeling system so that we can find it later when we're in similar situations and we need to compare the two. Okay? Now, if that's confusing, don't worry, I'm going to show you this, but just know this, because of the way that the historian's wired, this is how this works. Their verdict isn't based on what's true, only what feels true. Only what feels true. Okay, so again, you're going, what? This is getting really complicated. This is way more complicated than Pixar. I'll try to do my best. So I'm going to introduce you to this memory box. There it is. Here's a memory box that I've been working on for years in my life called Winter Roads. Can you read that? Winter Roads. Every time I experience something on a winter road, I contribute to this memory box. That's what happens. Now, again, what's in the memory box? Emotions based on the experiences that I've had, right? A verdict about those emotions and information pertinent to those emotions. So in this memory box, so you notice that I have Winter Roads and it says fun. That's my verdict, and it's also a description of the emotion that's in the box so that I know what to do with it in the present moment. Okay, so have you noticed that it says fun? So this box has not yet been updated from my accident, let's just say. okay? Because when I look into this box, I go, fun. Well, what's the verdict? Driving on winter roads is fun. I'm looking at the verdict on the inside of this box, and as I open it, I can feel the fun, right? As I revisit winter roads, this is awesome. And partly the reason I can see the details, the pertinent details are that I may have done some drifting in winter when I was a teenager, may have done donuts multiple places, multiple times, and may have hit snowbanks, and it was awesome because I dug myself out and everything. So this is my my parents watching this. I think they're watching this. This is going to be interesting. But my winter roads box, right? So now, after I've experienced hitting the ditch, getting concussion, writing off the matrix, the kaboom, the scariness of all of this, now I got a different emotion. Now the emotion that I associate with this is not just fun, it's mostly eclipsed actually by the word scary. It's scary. Winter roads are scary. And so this fear, there's different details. There's like flying plastic and concussion and down the hill and scary and driving out the ditch and having to replace the car. All of that's in here now. And so I draw a different verdict, and that is be super careful on winter roads, right? It's not just fun. It's not just a playground. Now it's scary. Be careful, right? And obviously this is something really, really helpful. So what happens is the other day or a month after the accident, because this update had happened, now, and it was all still fresh, we're driving around that on-ramp and my brain's going, oh, we've been here before. And now when it accesses winter roads in my mind, it reminds me, scary, scary, scary. And I grip the sides of the car. Are you following me? This is becoming really simple, I think. So let's picture let's do another one just for fun. This one's a pretend one, okay? This is my life, but it's pretend. So you'll notice that my friendship box says hurt and sad on it. And as I reminisce, this didn't really happen. Let's say that I go back in time and I reminisce about something that happened. I had a friend named Rudy. We did everything together. I didn't really, but I had a friend named Rudy. We did everything together, and we hung out together. We went fishing together. And then one day I was like 13, and I was standing at the 7-Eleven, and we were going to meet at the 7-Eleven, and we're going to go from the 7-Eleven, and we're going to ride on our bikes throughout the neighborhood and have an afternoon together with giant Slurpees in our hands. It was going to be so good. And as I'm standing there, the time starts ticking, and it's like after the time we're supposed to meet, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. What is happening, right? And so I'm like hurt, I'm sad, and it starts to rain, and so that my grief at being abandoned is being washed away by the teardrops of the sky, and it's so sad. It's so sad. So this is my experience with friendship. And so in this box, I have the details of rain. I got looking at my watch and my feeling of abandonment. So I'm hurt and I'm sad. I make a verdict that friendships are painful, right? And I seal this sucker up and I put it aside. And that's kind of how I access the future. It's ready now to be accessed by my brain. So whenever I meet somebody new, this is going to come up, all right? So this is how the memory box system works, how the archiving works with a historian. Here's some more about the historian that makes it even more complicated. Okay, so number one, he usually gets things wrong because he's using feelings as a guide, right? Because it's all about how it made us feel in the moment. That's what we remember. How many of you have heard that phrase? People won't remember most of what you tell them, but they'll remember how you made them feel. This is why. This is because our brains are organized according to how it registered emotionally. That's what it did. And so this is how our brains work. We need to understand this. So next thing, you can tell as I look at this box that he's a chronic oversimplifier. Right? It's like this is a very complex situation. Like maybe the guy's mom died. Like I don't know why he's late, but I drew this conclusion, this verdict, again, not based on what's true, but what feels true in the moment. Friendship sucks, it's dangerous, it's hurtful. Slap it on the box, right? And so he's always oversimplifying, which is a huge problem. Now, the last thing about the narrator, or so the historian, that you need to know is that he actually takes a lot of advice from the devil. And you're going, what? No, he actually does. And it's not like the devil comes with winged horns and flapping and lands like on this perch and goes, I want to ruin you. It's not like that. It's like he insinuates himself. It's like he becomes part of these internal conversations between the historian, narrator, and prophet. And he's just like one of the guys. He's like throwing thoughts in. They don't even recognize what's happening. But he draws a lot of conclusions about our past that he's helped along by the devil with. So this is what Jesus actually says about the devil. Jesus Christ, who would know the devil because the devil's been trying to, undermine everything he does since the beginning of time. So this is what Jesus says. He says, the devil is a liar and the father of lies. So we know the devil's a liar, right? He's always deceiving, he's always lying. But look what it says. It says he is the father of lies. What does that mean? It means lies, are you ready? Are fathered. There is a moment of conception as the lies that he is propagating are accepted by us. When we agree with the enemy's lies, there's a conception point. They start to take on a life within us. And in particular, the devil is very active as we're forming these friendship boxes and making these verdicts. He's like, how that was painful? Oh, that was super painful. So he's the one that maybe told me that friendships are painful. Not all friendships are painful. That's not true, but it feels true when he suggests it to me because it feels true, and that's how the historian works. I go, that must be true, and I put it in the box, and before I know it, I'm living with this mentality in life, even if it's underneath the surface, that friendships are painful. That's how the devil works. Let me introduce you to the narrator next. The narrator is the one, as you can see, that describes what's happening in the present by accessing the archives. What archives? The ones the historian put into place, these memory boxes, okay? So now you would think this is a really simple job. Just stand there in the moment with a pad, okay? Or laptop or whatever, and just write down what's happening. Just the facts, nothing but the facts. So help me God, and just please no fake news. Just please describe what's happening. You think this would be simple, but the problem is that the narrator is a bit of a character. Just like the historian is super emotional, the narrator is kind of flaky. And here's what I mean. He relies heavily on déjà vu to interpret the present. So again, you think he could be super objective and draw conclusions, and he doesn't do that. He's like kind of touchy-feely too. He's all emotional too. So he's just walking through the moment, and he's like, oh, feels like I've been here before. And when the narrator feels like he's been here before, he doesn't think objectively about the facts. And he compares the present to memory boxes in the archives. That's his modus operandi, okay? So he's not just thinking objectively, he's doing comparison. He's doing a déjà vu comparison, apples to oranges, close enough. And if it's close enough, then he makes these comparisons and draws conclusions for what we should do in the present moment. That's how he works. And he also takes a lot of advice from the devil. All right, so now let's pick up this box again, and let's assume that all this stuff has been put in there and that the devil's influenced what's been put on the box. It's drastically oversimplified, right? And here I am, and I meet somebody new, all right? Brand new, just a couple months ago, before all this COVID nastiness came up, we were hanging out, we're doing stuff together, and I was a little nervous about entrusting myself to this person, but you know what? They always prove faithful. They're always kind. They're checking in on me, and it was super awesome, right? And so I'm having this great old time. So now things are starting to open up. We've been missing each other. You can go outside. You can take walks, social distancing, all that stuff. So we're going to meet at Nose Hill Park, right? So I go to Nose Hill Park. I'm so excited to meet. And I get there, and I'm waiting because we're supposed to meet at 2 o'clock. And at 2:05 comes, 2:10 goes by. He hasn't showed up. 2:15, 2:20. Now what happens? About now, I'm starting to feel the emotion I felt when Rudy left me standing in the rain. Why? The narrator, again, using deja vu, calls up archives and he wants to talk to the historian. So he's like, hey, we got a thing going on over here. Yeah, it seems kind of familiar. Can you see, do we have a box for this? You know, and the historian's like, oh yeah, man, we got a box for that. You know what it's like? It's like that Rudy thing. The thing that happened with Rudy, that's happening again right now. I'll send the box right up. So then the narrator looks at the box and goes, oh, hurt and sad. Yeah, we really have been here before, right? So this is how the conversation can go. This is how it can go. So he's like, you know, this really does, the narrator says, this really does feel like that. And the historian is like, oh, this doesn't just feel like that. This is that, my friend. If it smells like betrayal, it's betrayal, okay? We have been here before. I'm feeling a little bit exposed right now. And then the prophet jumps in. I just want to know, what did we decide last time? Like, what course of action did we take? And the historian's like, oh, I can tell you. We made a vow in here. We would never let anyone hurt us like that again. That's what we decided. And then the prophet's like, well, then we will never let anyone do that to us again. We've got to back away from this friendship. And the narrator's going, okay, so should I call him up? Should I, make this happen? No. We're just going to drift away. We're just going to drift away because I kid you not. He starts to make prediction. I kid you not. If we let people walk on us like this again, we will never hear the end of it. And here's what happens. The moment you open this old memory box that's full of what? Hurt and betrayal and sadness. The moment that happens, the emotion of that time with Rudy comes flooding into the present moment, and you're suddenly feeling exactly what you felt when Rudy stood you up in the rain, even though it's not raining, and even though Rudy has long since moved away and joined the circus, has nothing to do with your life. So here you are in the present moment, feeling what you felt when you were 13 years old, right? And now you're trying to figure out what to do. And it feels like what's happening is it's getting reinforced again. So the historian gets out the box, says, we got to update this. I don't know if this is stated strongly enough for next time, so that we know how to react when we face a friendship again. And this is where the devil comes in. The devil hears all of this internal dialogue that we're having, and he insinuates himself into the conversation. And this is what he says. He says, you know what? It's just not worth it. Just not worth it. And somebody, maybe the narrator goes, you know what? That is so true. That is so... Well, don't you agree, guys? The prophet's like, it seems like it to me, right? It's going to keep on happening. If we don't, and then the historian's like, and it's happened before, right? And so what happens is then we sometimes will actually take the verdict that's buried deep under the emotions. We'll just stick it right on the outside of the box. Not worth it. So now, what do you think? With all that emotion sealed back into this box, more betrayal, even though my new friend has been nothing but loyal and is probably late for just some unrelated reason, how do you think I'm going to relate to friendship in the future? This is how the devil steals, kills, and destroys us. So tragic. So tragic. Now, what we're going to do next week is we are going to meet the prophet. Okay? So I'm going to spend some time on the prophet next week, but for now, I'm going to stick with the narrator primarily and the historian. But just suffice it to say that none of these bozos are qualified to run our mind. Like, the historian got thrown in that job because there's no one else. Same with the narrator, same with the prophet. And what ends up happening is, left to ourselves, what we're left with is a biased historian, an unreliable narrator, and a false prophet. That's who's running the show. That's why you get stuck in the past, rehashing the same stuff over again, why you get stuck in the future, obsessing about the same things over and over again, is because these bozos don't know how to do their job. And I'm talking about me now. Again, yours probably don't have a faux hawk, but you understand. This is what's going on in our minds. So now the question becomes, how do we fix this mess? I'll tell you what my initial reaction is. Let's pull a Trump. You're fired, just fired. Everyone's fired, out of the, don't even pack up your stuff. Just go. Go, I don't need you. But the problem is you can't just fire the historian. You can't just fire the narrator and the prophet. Why? Because these are functions of your mind. They are God-given faculties that you need in order to thrive in the present moment. They just don't know how to do their jobs. So what needs to happen is these guys need serious retraining. Okay? Serious retraining. And how do we do that? We've already covered the first one. Here's the first one. Remember this? We make all three report to Jesus from now on. In other words, we take our thoughts captive. So we have a team meeting. We go, you guys are not running the show anymore. Like, oh, yes, we are. Oh, no, you're not. Because you exercise your will, right? Over your thoughts. You take your thoughts captive. And what? You make them obedient to Christ. Jesus is in charge from now on. Jesus knows how to write history. He knows how to interpret the present. He knows how to look at the future. So from now on, all y'all can take your cues from Jesus. Okay? So that's the first thing. In your mind, you have to decide with your will, I'm not just going to let my mind run roughshod over me. I'm actually going to exercise my will over my mind and let Jesus transform my mind so that I can prove that his will is good, pleasing, and perfect. Okay? Now, how does that happen? How do we let Jesus retrain our mind? And that's the second piece. We need to replace our faulty verdicts with Jesus' verdicts. In other words, we let Jesus get access to our memory boxes, sometimes one at a time, and we let him go, what do you mean it's not worth it? And we let him address what's wrong inside so that we come to a different conclusion. We plant a different sticker on here, and we find healing in the moment instead of reinforcing the old lies that are keeping us in bondage. Is that good? So good. Now, here's how this can work. In the last few minutes here, I want to walk you through a few verses from Psalm 139 where King David, who is really self-aware, is talking to God about this process that he understands that God can take him on, this renewal process. This is how he starts. He says, you've searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with all my ways. So he reminds himself, first of all, God knows all this. God knows how my mind works. God knows my past, my present, my future. He knows all of this. God, you know me. Not just that, you know my ways. What are ways? A way refers to a path. So he's saying, God, you know the paths I travel. You know the habits that I've formed. You know the way my brain obsesses about that thing in the past or carries that wound with me into the present and into the future. You know how I worry and what I worry about. You know my ways, Lord. So that's the first thing. We're going to let our ways be open to God. We're going to trust him with redefining our ways, giving us different ways of processing our thoughts. So then he goes on. Look at this. He says, oh, so good. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They can't be numbered. I can't even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand. God's thinking about you all the time. You know how you're thinking about you all the time? You're thinking about your past, thinking about your present, thinking about your future. Your historian's messing stuff up for your narrator who's passing it on to the prophet who's making all these false predictions that never come true. And you're living in anxiety and angst because of all of it. He knows all of this. Your thoughts are just popping up like crazy, but God's thoughts for you are precious. And he has so many thoughts about you, you could never even count those thoughts. And here's the exciting part. Just one of those thoughts can change your life. Because how many of you know that when God takes his thoughts and speaks them to you, they become his word, and his word is truth, and his truth sets us free. And the Holy Spirit is then on it. He's like guiding us into all truth. This is what God wants for you and me. Just one of those thoughts can displace one of my thoughts that's toxic, that's hurtful, and then I suddenly am set free to see and think the way God sees and thinks. And over time, he will retrain my inner historian, my inner narrator, and my inner prophet so that they're not biased historians, unreliable narrators, and false prophets, but in service to the King of Kings, seeing the world the way he sees it, and free to thrive in the present moment. So this is how David ends his psalm. He says, because you know me, and because you understand my ways and the ways that are helpful and the ones that are not, because you have got all these thoughts for me, he's like, I need you to search me. I need you to just like get the scanner out and find the stuff in me that's broke. Okay? So look, he says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive or hurtful way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Now, you need to hear this. It doesn't matter how long you've been thinking these bad thoughts and have these bad tendencies to constantly sabotage your own life and let these bozos run the show when Jesus could be setting you free. But no matter how far you've gone down that path, I'm telling you that Jesus, his promises are for you. So he can take us from wherever we are and make things better. Can you believe that? No matter where you're at, no matter how dark it is, no matter how despondent you are, no matter how discouraged you are, Jesus can do this for you. He did this for me yesterday. I was down in the dumps. I was in tears yesterday. And then he came alongside me through people like my kids and my wife and by his Spirit, and he replaced my thoughts that were toxic with thoughts that were life. And I'm actually doing so much better today. Do you believe that God can do this for you today? Because you sure can. So here's how this can work. Number one, we're going to ask God to guide you as you explore your emotions and your memories. So here's the beautiful thing. If this is true, if the emotion I'm feeling in the present moment is actually coming from somewhere else in the past, then what can happen is that I can follow the aroma trail of that emotion to where it's coming from in the past, to find that actual memory box. So I start my conversation with Jesus going, oh my goodness, I'm really discouraged and down. Where is this coming from? Right? Not is this true yet, but where is it coming from? So Jesus may guide me back through the pages of my life to a memory box where this emotion originated, where it's coming from. And then what he wants to do is he wants to talk to you about what's in the box. Now, do you remember what's in the box? This brings us to the second one. We're going to ask him, oh, I just went too far. We're going to ask him about what he would like us to know about our verdicts and our labels. So remember the verdict, right? Not worth it. He's like, can I talk to you about that? Because that's not true. Right? And you're like, but it feels true because I've been hurt and I'm sad, I've been betrayed. And you bring that to Jesus and you invite him. What are your thoughts that can set me free from my thoughts? What verdict do you have on this situation that can set me free from my verdict that's been keeping me in this cage all these years? Do you see? And so what happens is Jesus then gives you his thoughts in place of your thoughts. That's renewing your mind. That's retraining your historian, your narrator, and your prophet to see the world and live accordingly, according to God's truth. So what happens is this. We're going to ask him what he would like you to know about those verdicts. So once you follow that emotional trail back to a memory box, and you're reliving that memory and the verdicts that came out of it, the lies that the enemy planted, you're simply just going to ask Jesus, would you reveal your truth to me now? What do you want me to know in this memory? What do you want me to know about that verdict? And then you just listen and watch. God may reveal things. You might hear things in your mind. You might see things visually as you're imagining. You might just suddenly sense peace. The emotion goes away. There's all kinds of things that can happen. I know I've just unloaded a lot on you. And so again, I encourage you to take the time to sit in this for a little bit. And take some time with Jesus, right, to process.
your presence, there is freedom. In your presence, there is hope. In your presence, there is healing. Love restores me. I am whole. No matter how far I run, you are with me. No matter how far I fall, your love is everlasting. Your kindness never ends. God, you never leave me. Your presence goes before us. Your glory has no end. God, you never leave me. Oh, 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 oh. In your presence, there is power. Through your spirit, strength will rise. In your presence, there is mercy. In your presence, I'm alive. No matter how far I run, you are with me. No matter how far I fall, your love is everlasting. Your kindness never ends. God, you never leave me. Your presence goes before us. Your glory has no end. God, you never leave me. You will be our guide to the end, to the end. The Lord is with me. He will not forsake me. You will be our guide to the end, to the end. The Lord is with me. He will not forsake me. Your love is everlasting. Your kindness never ends. God, you never leave me. Your presence goes before us. Your glory has no end. God, you never leave me. Oh, guide to the end, to the end. The Lord is with me. He will not forsake me. You will be our guide to the end, to the end. The Lord is with me. He will not forsake me. You will be our guide to the end, to the end. The Lord is with me. He will not forsake me. Your love is everlasting. Your kindness never ends. God, you never leave me. Your presence goes before us. Your glory has no end. God, you never leave me. God, you never leave me. Oh, 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 oh. you hurting and broken within? Overwhelmed by the weight of your sin, Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst for a drink from the well? Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Leave behind your regrets and mistakes. Come today, there's no reason to wait. Jesus is calling. Bring your sorrows and trade them for joy. From the ashes a new life is born. Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, what a Savior! Isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Bow down before Him, for He is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Oh, what a Savior! Isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Bow down before Him, for He is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Whoa. Bear your cross as you wait for the crown. Tell the world of the treasure you found.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of Manifest Live. I hope that you've received hope and challenge and encouragement as we've spent this time together. You see some familiar faces dialogued around God's word. You know what? There's never been an easier time to spread the word than right now. All you got to do is press the like button, and in particular, the share button. Tell people about just anyone in your life that might benefit from what we've talked about today. Could you share this on your timeline, in your social feeds, and spread the word so that we can help Jesus in his mission to reclaim and seek and save all those who are lost. Have an amazing day. Love you guys.